It's truly and officially the end of an era for the Boston Bruins as David Krejci announces his retirement just weeks after Patrice Bergeron did the same. We'll talk about it on today's episode of Locked On Boston Bruins.
You're Locked On Bruins, your daily podcast on the Boston Bruins. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, Bruins fans, and welcome back to the Locked On Boston Bruins podcast. I'm your host, Ian McLaren, and this is a daily show where we discuss all things Spoked B. Today is Monday, August 14th, and I want to thank you so much for making Locked On Bruins part of your day every single day. The podcast is free and available on your favorite podcast app, whether it's Apple, Spotify, Pocket Casts. You could also find the podcast on YouTube. So all you have to do, open up your app, go to YouTube, search up Locked On Boston Bruins, smash that subscribe button. Each new episode will be automatically added to your feeds for you to download, listen, and enjoy. If you could rate and review, that would be kindly appreciated as well. You can find the podcast on social media at Locked NHL Bruins. And you can find me, my dad jokes, and hockey thoughts at Ian C. McLaren. Quick reminder, the podcast is down to 3 episodes per week through the month of August, early September as well, as we're in a relative hockey quiet zone. Apart from a couple big retirement announcements for the Boston Bruins in recent weeks, Patrice Bergeron officially hung up the skates a couple weeks ago. And here on Monday morning, after 15 NHL seasons, David Krejci has decided to retire from the best league in the world. And here is his official announcement. Quote, "I would like to take this opportunity to thank Cam Neely and Don Sweeney for allowing me to take my time with my decision and announcement. I want to thank the Jacobs family and the entire Bruins organization for believing in me over and over again and giving me the opportunity to be part of this amazing family for so many years. When I was drafted in 2004, I had no idea that I would be working with such incredible and driven people who would lead us to 3 Stanley Cup finals and winning the ultimate goal in 2011. So many great friendships throughout the organization. You have always been there for me whenever I needed something and will always be here for you. To my teammates, I've been very lucky to be on so many good teams and play with so many great players. You always start as coworkers but end as friends, and I'm so proud to have met some of my closest friends over the years. That's the best part about our sport. Thank you to all the coaching staffs I was lucky to have in my career. I was coached by some of the best in the world. Thank you to my agents for all you have done for me since my teenage years." He goes on to thank his mother and father, his brother Zdenek, his wife Naomi, and his kids Alina and Everett. This part's really important. He said, "As I'm writing this and hearing you and the kids playing and being really loud, it makes me happy that I get to experience it in real life and not over the phone when we're on trips far away. You understood all the hard work I had to put in and all the hours in the summer to get ready for a new season. You always listened when I was in my lows and gave me strength and the right advice. Now it's time for me to try to be the best husband and father I can be and support you in our next chapter of life." He thanked the media, really appreciates media, even if he didn't like speaking so much. And then to the fans and the city of Boston, "You have always treated me with nothing but respect, and I will be forever grateful. I'll miss playing in front of you, but I am and always will be a Bruin, DK46. End quote. And I think that part there about his family is key, and it was the same for Patrice Bergeron. I'm a father of 3. I know what it's like to want to witness everything that your kids are doing. I've had kids in hockey. I have one boy who's now in rep basketball, and I can't imagine missing a minute of them doing their thing, of seeing them grow, develop their passions and talents. And for pro hockey players, it's not just life on the road, it's the hours training, it's the pregame naps, it's everything. And I'm sure you miss so much. And Bergeron, Krejci will now get to spend some prime years with their kids and watching them continue to grow. And that's huge. Krejci even said it in his statement as well. It's a family priority, and it's also, it really is about the friends you make along the way. We can talk about missed opportunities in 2013, 2019, the losses in the Stanley Cup Finals, but the friendships, the bonds they made through those trials and tribulations, those ups and downs, that really does last forever. Winning a Stanley Cup is amazing. David Krejci to Nathan Horton. Honestly, that's probably the highlight of my hockey loving life. Watching them win that Game 7 in the Eastern Conference Finals in 2011, just to get to the final. That was the one and only time I was in tears watching hockey. I was more emotional about that than the Game 7 win against the Vancouver Canucks, probably because the Bruins won 4-0 that game and scored early on and often in that one. Whereas in Game 7 against Tampa, it was that one goal near the end, set up beautifully, perfectly by David Krejci, typifying his performance as a Boston Bruin. I will never forget that moment as long as I live. And that wasn't even to win the Stanley Cup. That was just a moment along the journey. The journey is the destination, as they say. I was watching, kind of off topic, but I recently binge watched Swagger on Apple TV. And one of the big themes in season 2 was democracy, whether it's the journey or a destination, and how it can be both. And same with being a hockey fan, same with being a hockey player. You're not going to win the Stanley Cup every single year. There's ups and downs. If you get a taste of it once, that's more than most. And the fact that the Bruins won a Stanley Cup in large part due to David Krejci's performance and made it to a couple more finals, it's a testament to David Krejci, the work that he put in, and how great of a player he was. And we're going to discuss his legacy as a member of the Boston Bruins coming up here after the break. FanDuel is the official sports betting partner of Locked On and the NFL. And right now, football season, preseason is on, and before kickoff, you can bet on your Super Bowl winner and get bonus bets every time that team wins during the regular season. All you have to do is pick a team to win the Super Bowl, and then you'll get those bonus bets after every victory during the regular season. You can use those bonus bets on spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. All you have to do is visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to start earning bonus bets with America's #1 sportsbook. That's FanDuel.com/LockedOn. Football season is about to kick off. FanDuel is giving you this chance to win all season long. Use promo code FanDuel.com/LockedOn to start earning those bonus bets. Thank you so much once again for making Locked On Boston Bruins part of your day every single day. The podcast free and available on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube. everydayers can expect a fresh new episode on Wednesday, and we'll continue our Which Bruins Wore It Best series, looking at numbers 29 down to 20. Today, though, we're talking about David Krejci and his legacy as a Boston Bruin. And there's no doubt in my mind that number 46 belongs in the TD Garden rafters. He is one of the great Boston Bruins of all time. How do I come to that conclusion? Well, he ranks 5th all time in games played, behind Ray Bourque, Johnny Bucyk, Patrice Bergeron, and general manager Don Sweeney. Not in the top 10 in goals, but he's 5th in assists and 9th in total points. So right there, one of the best offensive Bruins of all time. He's also up there in terms of his playoff performances as well. We all know David Krejci, a prolific forward in the playoffs. He raised his game year in and year out in the postseason. And here are his final numbers. 160 games, playoff games, 43 goals, 85 assists for 128 points in the postseason. He led the team in scoring in 2011 when they won the Stanley Cup. Team high 12 goals, 23 points, 10 of which were scored at even strength. And he led the team in scoring in 2013 run to the Stanley Cup final. He would have been the Conn Smythe Trophy winner had they won the Stanley Cup that year. I've no doubt about it. 26 points in 22 games, team high 26 points, 17 assists. Even in 2019, stellar performance that year as well. 24 games, 4 goals, 12 assists. He had 4 points in 4 games in 2023 against the Panthers. 9 points in 11 games in 2021. Just year in and year out, a consistent playoff performer. One of the greats for the Bruins all time in terms of playoff stats. Now, he didn't win any major awards as a member of the Boston Bruins, but just a consistent presence year in and year out. Stanley Cup champion. He's performed at the international level as well. And just trying to bring up Bruins all-time playoff stats as well to give you a sense of where he sits in those categories. But again, just consistently great year in and year out. And I believe he deserves a spot in the rafters. Here we go. Bruins all-time playoff leaders. David Krejci ranks 4th all-time among Bruins in terms of, actually, he sits in a tie for 2nd, along with, if you can believe this, Brad Marchand, Patrice Bergeron, David Krejci, all with 128 playoff points for their careers. So, fittingly, Bergeron, Krejci finishing tied in that category. Brad Marchand, hopefully he'll add to that at some point. Only Ray Bourque with more points at 161. All 3 of those guys, Marchand, Bergeron, Krejci, Stanley Cup winners. And Marchand, Bergeron locks to have their jerseys retired. And I believe number 46 should be up there as well. Leading point scorer on your team when you win the Stanley Cup, check, 2011. He led the team in 2013, would have won the Conn Smythe, up there with some of these franchise greats, tied with Bergeron with 10 fewer playoff games played, I should add. Marchand, 146 playoff games compared to 170 for Bergeron, 160 for Krejci. So he will more than likely end up in sole possession of second place at some point, perhaps the next captain of the Boston Bruins. But David Krejci, playoff performer, consistent year in and year out, and deserves to have his jersey hung from the rafters. Not to mention his status as a leader. He's not, like he said in his statement, he doesn't always like to be the guy out front speaking, not always comfortable with a microphone in his face, but a leader. And there was a cool story this morning on Twitter or X or whatever you want to call it, from Steve Conroy of the Boston Herald in 2011. Lake Placid, if you recall, the Bruins took a break between, I think, game 2 and 3 when they lost the first 2 games against the Montreal Canadiens. Quietly walked over to the jukebox, put on Don't Stop Believin'. We all know the Bruins came back and won that series and then went on to win the Stanley Cup. That's the kind of quiet confidence that he had, and he backed that up on the ice. Certainly. So, David Krejci, I mean, what can you say about Krejci, Bergeron, having that combo down the middle for the Boston Bruins for the last almost 2 decades has been a special and rare treat. Not something to be taken for granted. You can crap on them for not winning more than one Stanley Cup, but man, for those of us who were fans before they arrived, and now as we enter into a new era, we will look back on these years as certainly something special, and these guys will always have that bond. Where do the Bruins go moving forward? Well, we already knew Bergeron was gone. We expected Krejci to be gone. And coming up after the break, we'll take a look at the state of the Bruins down the middle. And I'm not going to lie, it's a little scary. So David Krejci officially retired. We all knew Patrice Bergeron was already gone. Where does that leave the Bruins down the middle? Well, for this season, you have Charlie Coyle, Pavel Zacha, Morgan Geekie, Trent Frederick as center candidates, along with perhaps John Beecher. It's a little slim, let's be honest. I think I saw it best on Twitter this morning. The Bruins have the best goaltending tandem in the NHL. They made a point of keeping together their league-leading defense from last season for the most part. Out is Connor Clifton. In comes Kevin Shattenkirk, still anchored by Charlie McAvoy, Hampus Lindholm, Brandon Carlo, Matt Grzelcyk, Derek Forbort. And then you have Jakub Zboril, Kevin Shattenkirk, and Ian Mitchell rounding it out. I'm still surprised that both Grzelcyk and Forbort remain on the roster. That still could change, but the Bruins obviously had some premonition that things would be a bit thinner up front. So they prioritized the back end and keeping together the goaltending tandem of Linus Ullmark and Jeremy Swayman. So you have arguably the best goaltending tandem, last year's best defense core. That's the stuff of champions right there. They have some all-world wingers in David Pastrnak, Brad Marchand, high-end options in Jake DeBrusk. Hopefully James Van Riemsdyk can make an impact. But down the middle, it's, if you just looked at ranking center depth in the NHL, and maybe that's something that we'll do at some point in the near future, the Bruins have to be near the bottom in terms of center depth. And it's a key position. And the Bruins, could struggle as a result. the offense certainly won't be as potent as it was last season. We did see glimpses of success in the playoffs with Charlie Coyle paired with Brad Marchand, Pavel Zacha, and David Pastrnak have some chemistry. But can that sustain itself over a full 82 games? Can you rely on Charlie Coyle to ride with Marchand for a full regular season and expect that same level of success? I mean, probably not. There will be options next summer for the Bruins to replenish at that position in free agency. You'll have, Austin Matthews available, Steven Stamkos. Probably those guys will re-up with their current squads. But there's options like a Mark Scheifele, perhaps. Elias Lindholm in Calgary is the most talked about option. It's kind of insane that the Bruins just expected Bergeron and Krejci to go, and they didn't do a ton to even bring in another option down the middle for this coming season. Perhaps that's the reason why their lottery pick is protected. The one that was sent to Tyler Bertuzzi, or for Tyler Bertuzzi to the Detroit Red Wings, top 10 protected. It's kind of a gap year for the Bruins. They brought in, like we talked about, some veteran options on the cheap to kind of help things sustain up front. They're hoping Morgan Geekie can take a step forward with an increased role. Perhaps Trent Frederick can find his form at his natural position. But let's not kid ourselves. It's a major downgrade to go from Bergeron and Krejci 1-2 to Coyle and Zacha 1-2. There's just no sugarcoating it. Will the Bruins address it before the beginning of this season? Perhaps. Will they tackle this next offseason? That's more likely. Do they have anything in the system? Probably not as much as you can hope for the best from Brett Harrison or Matt Poitras. I mean, it's going to be hard to find another Bergeron and another Krejci in our lifetimes. Let's be honest. Those two guys were legendary and really all-time Boston Bruins. You can make obviously Bergeron will be in the Hall of Fame. Krejci, kind of borderline, but in terms of all-time Bruins, he's one of the greats. And I know a lot of us are feeling the impact of losing both of those guys in the same offseason. I had thought Bergeron would be back. I was expecting Krejci to retire. At the end of the day, both are gone, and we move on. That's all we can do. Continue to support this team. Lucic coming back now. He and Marchand, the only remaining players on the team from that 2011 squad. It's going to be a different feel for the Bruins moving forward. A lot of us are inner fields, but we'll get through this together, friends. We always do. And it's not the first time we've said goodbye to David Krejci. I was pleasantly surprised that he came back. We all wish they could have finished it off on hockey's peak after what was such a great regular season. Don't always get a happy ending, but these guys now get to spend more time with their families, and that's what really it is all about at the end of the day. Thank you so much for taking some time to check out today's podcast. Thank you to David Krejci for all he brought to the Bruins. He will be meeting with the media on Tuesday. So on Wednesday's show, I'll be sure to bring any nuggets that he offered in that availability, and we will look at which Bruins wore it best in the 20 to 29 range. And be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube to catch all the latest with respect to the black and gold here on Locked On Boston Bruins, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your favorite team every single day. Take care, friends.